Hey, how's it going? Apart from video blogging, I also write a lot. Mainly on Facebook. Sometimes I'll do 1,000 word posts. You won't be able to see any of them because I keep them friends only and I'm not accepting friend requests from people I don't really know. But yeah, so I do this. I write 1,000 word posts, a lot more than I probably, like if only I could write that much for an essay more easily. For like uni or something. But no, I write a lot on Facebook, and often it's about mental health and that kind of thing. So yeah, I talk about what I'm going through. And there are a few reasons that I do that. One is like to help break through the stigma, because like I don't really care what people think about me. I've kind of messed up my life enough that I don't really have anything to lose by doing it. But also, yeah, just like to break through the stigma, because I don't really have anything to lose. It's easier for me to be the person to sort of, yeah, keep saying stuff, because then people are like, oh, I'm not the only one who has this problem, or oh, now I understand why she does this and this and this. And then if I'm talking about it, more people might talk about it, and then you just sort of build up until we get rid of the stigma. Another one is like sometimes you'll see a news story where someone suicided and the friends and family will be like, you know, I wish I'd seen it earlier so I could have said something or could have helped them and whatever. Yeah, so if I'm talking about it, it's less likely to happen to me. People won't be like, I wish I'd helped her and whatever. They actually know that I'm already going through this. And then you hope that, like, you know, with the stigma thing, if more people are talking about it, it's less likely that people will be in that situation where they have to go, I wish I'd done more. Yeah, and then also, yeah, just people, it actually kind of helps people. So that's something I didn't realize about YouTube when I first started years and years and years ago, but I was talking about this kind of stuff in video then, and every now and then I get a private message saying, hey, I'm going through this as well, your videos really helped me because now I know that I'm not the only one, blah, 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 blah. And I'm actually getting that kind of thing on Facebook as well. Some people will comment, but a lot of other people will send me a private message saying, hey, yeah, I'm going through this as well. And for whatever reason, they can't say it publicly on their wall to their friends and family, or they don't have someone that they can talk to. And yeah, because they know I'm going through it and I'm not really going to judge them for it because that's what I'm going through. Yeah, a surprising number of people feel more comfortable talking to me than, you know, whoever's around them. So yeah, what I try and do is I try and help them out, like if they're not sure where to get treatment, or that kind of stuff. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in Australia, the media, whenever they have these stories, they just tell you to call Lifeline. They don't tell you to go to your GP for treatment. They're just like, yeah, call Lifeline, which is frustrating because, you know, if you went to see your GP, maybe you wouldn't get to the point where you're suicidal. I mean, some people don't realize they've got a problem until they've been suicidal, but there are other people who are sort of going down the gradual spiral who need to see their GP before they get to the point of calling Lifeline. Yeah, so there are a surprising number of people who don't know what their treatment options are. So I try and help them with that because I've been in the system for about 10 years on and off, you know, going to my GP, seeing psychologists and psychiatrists, trying medication, trying therapy. Now I've even had the Centrelink experience. So, plus I get curious and I read a lot of stuff. So yeah, I try and help people work out what they should do. So I thought I'd just go through one of the most common questions I get, which is medication worth it? And this is usually from people who either their GP has prescribed them something or they've been sent to see a psychiatrist and that's their first experience of the mental health system. So they don't necessarily know what the options are, or what they can do, like, you know, do they have to take the medication that they're being prescribed and whatever. So yeah, I thought I'd just go through some of that because I wrote something recently to a friend explaining a lot of stuff and they found it pretty helpful. So I'm hoping this helps and I'm hoping I don't get too off topic. So let's start with the difference between your treatment options before we even get to the drugs. Because your GP can prescribe you medication, but you've got to remember they're not experts on the drugs for your mind. They're a general practitioner, it's more of a general thing. So if they think you need a more specialized person to look after you with medication, they'll send you to a psychiatrist. Now, a psychiatrist is still a doctor. They've gone through medical school and all that. I should point out here that I'm talking about the Australian system. I don't necessarily know how it works elsewhere. It's probably similar, but just, yeah. Anyway, so psychiatrist has been to medical school for the ridiculous number of years you've got to do that, and then they've specialized in psychiatry, so they know a fuckload about medication and interactions with other drugs and so on. I think they also do have some experience in talk therapies, but their main thing is medication. That's what they understand. So I get the impression that some aren't so comfortable with therapy, although you do occasionally get some who are right into it and won't necessarily prescribe you something until they've talked to you for a bit. But yeah, some of them I think do default to medication a little bit too quickly, but depends on the person. But you don't have to see a psychiatrist. You could see a psychologist. Now, a psychologist is a bit different to a counselor. A counselor, like anyone, I'm pretty sure it's still the case that anyone can kind of call themselves a counselor. You don't need much to, So counselors don't necessarily have a lot of training. A psychologist, on the other hand, they've done at least 6 years of university level stuff. And you have to go through 4 years and do an honours in psychology, and you have to take certain subjects to be able to do that. So you don't necessarily need a Bachelor of Psychology. I think you can do it through arts and science degrees as well, but you have to take certain subjects and you have to do your honours year. And then you have to do 2 extra years, either a Master's of Clinical Psychology, which I'm not sure what's in that, or you do a more practical experience-based 2 years, which, yeah, I'm not fully up on the details, but at least 6 years of training. And it's quite hard to get into those degrees as well, I think, still. So yeah, their qualifications are different. Psychiatrist is a doctor, a psychologist is not a doctor, but the way they treat you is with talk-based therapy. So the most common is cognitive behavioral therapy. And the way that works is they're basically looking at the way you think. So they'll take your thoughts and then they'll see how you're reacting to a situation. And if you're doing something that's a bit illogical, or, you could be thinking about something in a more healthy way, they'll try and work with you to get through that. So an example could be if you're walking down the street or whatever and a friend passes you, but they don't say hello. If you're, this is a really simplistic example, but if you're in that sort of mind space, you might think, oh, they didn't say hello, they must hate me, or I did something wrong, or, you put down yourself a lot. But it could just be that they didn't notice you because they were totally lost in their own thoughts. And if they found out that they walked past you without saying hello and were rude and all that, they would be so embarrassed. So it's not actually about you, it's just about them not noticing you. So cognitive behavioral therapy will sort of take you through those steps. Okay, here's the situation, here's how you've reacted, but have you considered this possibility? That's a real simplification of what cognitive behavioral therapy is, but gives you a vague idea of how they're going to do things. If you're in therapy, you won't necessarily notice them going through that segmented approach. They tend to be a bit more natural with the way they take you through it, but gives you a rough idea. There's also other ones which I'm a bit less impressed with. I'm not sure how the science is with it, but like acceptance and commitment therapy, which I don't quite understand, but I think it's a little bit more like, this is the way shit is, you kind of have to deal with it. Now, what are your values? And let's try and live a life according to those values as best you can. I found it a bit depressing in that sense. It's like, really, I have to accept the world for being shit? Like, why don't I just kill myself? But that my understanding of it might be a bit warped, just because I only had one psychologist who tried that with me, and maybe they weren't any good at it. So yeah, but cognitive behavioral therapy, I think they're all trained in that, and that one has a solid basis for it. So yeah, you don't have to see a psychiatrist and take meds. You can just do the talk-based therapy. But so are meds worth it? That question really comes down to what type of depression you have, and that will determine whether or not you're better off seeing the psychologist or the psychiatrist. The most common type of depression is actually more like a psychology-based one, where you're thinking things like that person walking up down the street and ignoring you. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on how you know that you have the more psychological one. Chances are you do, because it's more common. But so I guess maybe you wake up feeling okay, but then you start thinking things, and as the day goes on you feel worse and worse just because you're thinking so much shit. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Whereas if you have more of a biological depression, or if your psychological depression is very severe, and in that case there's probably some argument to say you do have a bit of a biological depression mixed in with your psychological depression. I think I used to have a mix of it, and now I'm just more biological. But yeah, if you have more severe depression or biological depression, in that case your brain chemistry is kind of fucked and you do need some medication. If yours is just psychological, talking might be enough. But if you have anything more than that, you might need some meds. You probably still need a bit of the talk therapy. For me, not so much, because I've been through so much talk therapy and I've gotten to the point where I know what they're going to say to me if I bring a thought to them, so I can sort of therapy myself in that sense. So after you've been through some psychology, if you get into the pattern and know how to sort through your thoughts, you may not need it anymore. Or you might need a different type of therapy, or one, like just someone to talk to who's not part of your social group if that's a problem for you. But yeah, so biological depression, severe depression, medication can help you alongside the talking therapy, or you can just try the medication. It kind of depends. But yeah, if yours is a biological problem, I think the easiest way to tell is in the morning. This isn't for everyone, but in the morning you wake up feeling a lot worse than the rest of the day. I guess if you're really bad in depression, you're gonna feel shit all day. But if you're more like where I've been more recently, the morning will be really slow. You'll feel sad even though you haven't thought about how shit the world is yet. Yeah, you feel sluggish. It'll be hard to concentrate on anything. If you can get yourself out of bed, it's just like you're kind of in a brain fog and whatever. But as the day goes on, sometimes you might recover from that. Like, for example, I had a day maybe only a couple weeks ago where my brain was not working that day until about after dinner, and then suddenly it was more awake and I could actually think again. It's a little bit hard to describe until you've experienced it. But yeah, I tend to get better later in the day, and like, it's not even from sleeping in. I'll be awake, nothing will change. I'll have been tired all day, and then I'll sort of start to wake up. Yeah, I think that's one of the ways that might hint you have more of a biological depression. You can also talk in a monotone if you're biological, and there's a whole bunch of things that can happen. I think also one of them is you completely lose your ability to feel enjoyment. Whereas if you have more of a psychological depression, maybe doing something that feels good will actually help you for a bit before you go back to depression. Whereas it's been really difficult for me to enjoy music, and music used to be one of my things. So that's when you lose interest in everything, even your passion, probably biological has something to do with it. So yeah, and then that's when you need medication. So yeah, are meds worth it? If you have biological depression, yes. If you only have psychological depression, then maybe. It depends. It can boost you a bit to get your therapy going, but you don't necessarily need to take it, and you don't need to take it that as long as someone with biological depression. It might help, it might not. It's hard to say. But I guess one of the other things people worry about is it worth it in terms of side effects? And, you know, is it going to turn me into a different person and all that kind of stuff. And I gotta say, with side effects, I think most people will be fine. For most people, you might get side effects for the first few weeks, but it'll gradually drop off until it doesn't bother you anymore. And not everyone has side effects. And the other thing is, these days they have much better medications. So they'll start you off on an SSRI, usually, because those are the more modern drugs that are still plenty effective on your brain, but they don't give you as many side effects. And there are heaps of SSRIs. So if one doesn't work for you, you can switch to another one, and chances are you will find an SSRI that works for you. But if you're someone like me and you're very sensitive to side effects, like I had one that put me to sleep so badly I couldn't function at work anymore. I had another one that made me start shaking like crazy, which I just had no idea that that was a bad thing to happen. I think it just warped the way I was thinking about it. So if you're someone like me, that's difficult, but most people don't get that type of side effect. You usually get the mild ones and they do go away. You got to remember also that it takes a while for you to start feeling better. So when you take the medication for the first time, you might get some side effects and not feel much better. But as time goes on, the side effects go down and the benefits go up. That's how it usually goes. If you go through all those, usually I think the next step is an SNRI, which has an action on one extra chemical in your brain. It's almost the same thing, it's just slightly stronger, and I think the side effects are still okay. After that, the next step is usually tricyclic antidepressants. So they're a lot stronger in terms of helping your mind, but they're also stronger in terms of side effects. But you might not get side effects. When I switched from SSRIs to a tricyclic, the interesting thing was I didn't get side effects straight away, or at least nothing that was particularly bad. I mean, I had dry mouth, which sucks when you're a singer, so I really did not enjoy that. And I also put on a bit of weight, but I'm a very picky eater, and so like I'm way too skinny. I needed to put on weight. So sometimes side effects work to your favor. There are also side effects where you actually lose weight. So, you know, depending on what you want to do with your weight, it's possible that an antidepressant can help you get there. But yeah, so those were my side effects for the tricyclic. It actually helped me. So when you hear about side effects, they're not always bad. Although the dry mouth, I really hated. But I was so depressed at the time that I was just not going to do any singing anyway, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, so that was an interesting thing with the tricyclic actually being more likely to give you side effects, but it wasn't so bad for me. And also my psychiatrist was smart. He started me off with all the drugs where they had smaller doses so that I could be eased on, because he knew I had this history of reacting badly to side effects. So he thought, if we ease you on, maybe the side effects will start off small enough that you can tolerate them with larger and larger doses as you go along. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work that way, but that was a strategy that might work for other people. If you do get a lot of side effects, just go on them slowly. And yeah, this is one of the reasons why seeing a psychiatrist might be better than seeing just a GP to prescribe you, because they can go through these strategies after knowing your history. And he knew which drugs came in the smallest doses so that he could wean me on. But yeah, anyway, I think the overall point I was making is that tricyclic sounds scarier, but it's not necessarily all that bad. Though you might be wondering why I stopped taking them. It's because they were working really well for a while, but sometimes what happens with antidepressants is your body kind of gets used to them and then they stop working, and that's what happened to me. And then when we tried to increase the dose, because it was one of the few things I was actually tolerating, unfortunately, increasing the dose, I started to get really bad stomach pains. So yeah, side effects. I think all along it was actually sort of making me slightly constipated, but so little that I didn't notice. And then when we did increase the dose, that became a lot worse, and that's when I got really bad stomach pains. And I started to feel like I might need to go to hospital, so I stopped taking them. But yeah, so it's a tricky process. You do have to try a lot of things to try and figure out what's going to work for you if you're someone like me. And unfortunately, nothing really worked for me. But for you, chances are you'll be like maybe 3 different SSRIs, and then you'll find one that's okay. That, you know, it's not too many when you're not someone like me. Most people do find the right one a lot quite quicker. But yeah, so I think SSRIs and tricyclics, if you go through that process of trying them, chances are one of them will be all right. But if none of those work, that's the point where I'm going to start thinking maybe this isn't worth it. Because we did try some other things, and at that point, like, it was just clear that I was really sensitive to side effects. There was one, I think it was called Valdoxin, but it's not on the PBS, so it was hideously expensive. It didn't give me side effects, but it also didn't do very much. Maybe helped with my sleep a little because it was melatonin acting or whatever. But yeah, that didn't really work. And then other things, like after the tricyclics, they can try you on ADHD stimulant medication. Because if you're depressed, a stimulant might pick you up. It's just, yeah, I felt nauseated on it. Yeah, it was no good. But they can do that. It works I think it works quite well for some people. I've also tried lithium to help one of the other drugs, but I felt sick on that as well. Works for some people, didn't work for me. Another option is antipsychotics. By the time he suggested that, I was like, I'm not taking anything else. I can't deal with the side effects anymore. They can also try you on ADHD, antipsychotics, the Valdoxin thing. I think the other big one is probably the MAOIs. Monoamine oxide inhibitor, or some fancy jargon like that. They're apparently quite a strong kind of drug. The only catch is you can only eat certain types of food with it. And for someone who has problems with weight and appetite, not a good idea for me. So you can't eat cheese, which means no more pizza. What's the point in living? And you can't have Vegemite, and I'm an Aussie. You can't take my Vegemite away. But if you are on this drug and you do take that medication, if you are on that medication and you do eat those foods, losing my mind, your blood pressure can spike to dangerous levels and you can die. So yeah, that was not something that I was going to try, because I would either starve or die. And I'm trying not to die. That's the whole point of getting treatment. Yeah, so after you've tried tricyclics, when they start suggesting other things, that's when I start questioning, is it really worth it? Now, you got to remember that in my situation, I have a good support network around me. My depression's a lot better than it used to be. I've never attempted suicide. So for me, considering my history with side effects, and all that that other surrounding stuff, it was just not worth it for me to go much past tricyclics. I did try a few of those other things, but they didn't work for me, and I was not trying MAOIs. But if you are the type of person who is really severely depressed and you don't have the kind of support that I do, it might be worth trying some of these things. You've just got to assess it based on who you are and your own situation and how you've been reacting to the drugs so far. But chances are you won't get to this extreme level. So I wouldn't worry too much. I would say yes, up to tricyclics, it's definitely worth trying the medication, but it will be a process. You will have to go through a lot of work. It's the same with talk therapy. You have to go through a lot of work to get there. It's just the drugs is a different type of thing, you know. You have to be on a drug for a good few months to see if it's going to work properly. So I think 2 months is usually how long you need to be on something before you know that it's not working. But if you do get side effects earlier, you can stop earlier. If the side effects are so bad that you can't wait for them to drop off, then it might not be the drug for you, and try another one. But yeah, if you're going okay, 2 months to see if it's doing anything to improve your mood. So it's a long process, but probably not as painful as what I went through. And the statistics are pretty good. in Australia, we don't have that kind of drug culture that America does, where they show these drug ads on TV and whatever. You can't do that in Australia, and the companies aren't based here. The government will only approve drugs on the PBS if they think it actually works. So, you know, if people who are skeptical about science, I can understand why you'd be skeptical about pharmacy in America, but in Australia we don't have that. I think they work. The statistics show that they work. The science shows that they work. It's not for everyone, and it can take a while to find the right drug, but chances are it will help you. Yeah, so if you're in the biological or severe depression camp, I would give them medications a go if your GP suggests it, or if they send you to a psychiatrist. If you're less severe, or if you're just not ready for trying medication, go to a psychologist. I did have one psychologist. The reason I started seeing a psychiatrist, I didn't see one for most of the time that I was depressed, but I finally had a psychologist saying, look, I think she needs medication, and I think she needs to see a psychiatrist to get proper medication help, because clearly what I was on wasn't helping. So you can always start with psychology if you're not sure about the medication. You can always go to the medication later. It's just important to start some kind of treatment. So yeah, if you're nervous about medication, start with the psychology, but try and be open to the psychiatry later. The final thing I want to say before we reach 30 minutes and I start freaking out about how long this is, you can shop around. In Australia, you first go to your GP, and your GP, sometimes they'll try to treat you, but usually they'll give you a referral either to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You can ask your GP, I want to see a psychologist and not a psychiatrist, or I want to see a psychiatrist and not a psychologist. You can tell your GP which one you want to see. They're not always going to listen to you, but usually they will, because, you know, if you don't want to see a certain person, you're not going to go, so what's the point in referring you? Once you've got a referral, it's covered under Medicare. You won't necessarily get all the money back from Medicare, but most of it will be covered. And then once you've spent a certain amount in a year, you end up on the safety net, and then they cover almost all the fee. So there's that if you're worried about money. But as well as that, if you go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist and you don't like them, you can't connect with them, you don't feel like you can talk to them, they're not the right person for you, you can always go back to your GP and say, this person didn't work out for me, can you refer me to someone else? So you can shop around. And I kind of had to do that. I did it a bit more slowly because I didn't realize my options at the time. But, you know, my first psychologist was like, happy people live longer. And I'm like, I'm fucking suicidal. I don't want to live longer. You know, who cares what happy people, you know, like just shit like that. So I was not connecting with her. She was not going to be able to help me. So I switched to another psychologist. I also briefly tried a young girl, but you know, I don't understand younger girls, like girls my age and whatever, so that was not going to work. I did find one that I stuck to for a long time, but towards the end she was not helping me, so I stopped seeing her. With psychiatrists, my first psychiatrist was just, I was on Cipramil. That was the one that was causing me to lose the most weight I'd ever lost in my life. Over about 4 years, I was just constantly losing weight, and towards the end, my appetite was just gone, and I was on liquid food. But yeah, so I told that psychiatrist, look, I think this drug that I've been on is destroying my appetite. I should probably come off it. And she didn't listen to me. She prescribed me more of the stuff. And then we had 1.5 hour, she got me talking for the whole session and then gave me no useful advice. And I was like, you seem nice, but you're not the one for me, so I stopped seeing her. But my second psychiatrist was fucking awesome because he didn't bullshit me. He was like, yeah, it might not work, we've just got to try stuff. And I'm not going to do talk therapy with you if you don't want to. And if you say that something isn't working, I'm going to listen to you. That's my kind of guy. So yeah, sometimes you need to shop around to find the right person. Because when you have like a broken leg, pretty much any doctor who fixes broken legs can fix your broken leg. They don't need to talk to it and make friends with it. But when it comes to your psychological problems, you need to have a good rapport with your treating professional, because if you can't talk to them, it's very difficult to treat your mind. You need more of a mind connection kind of thing. So yeah, that was the last thing, shop around. So in summary, psychologist is mainly for thoughts, fixing your thoughts. Most people have that kind of psychological depression. Talk-based therapy is probably good for everyone anyway, regardless of your type of depression, but they only do that. They don't prescribe medication. Psychiatrists can prescribe medication. They know more about it than GPs. They're not so good with talk therapy. If you have biological depression or more severe depression, you probably need a psychiatrist. Meds are probably worth it, at least up to the point of tricyclics. After that, assess your situation. And shop around, and I'm hoping that's a summary of stuff because it's half an hour and I need to eat something. Maybe udon. I hope that was helpful. I know I was a bit all over the place in some bits. So if there was anything that was unclear or you need more information or if I got something wrong, just leave me a comment and I'll try and write back something helpful. I'm mostly just doing these videos off the top of my head. I only have a vague idea of what I'm going to talk about and then my mouth kind of just goes boo. So yeah, it might be a bit nutty. I find writing a lot easier just because I can proofread myself and organize my thoughts a little bit better and delete tangents before I actually post them up. But yeah, when I do videos, it kind of just all comes out. So if there's anything you want more information about, put me a comment. Yeah, so I hope that helped. Like, one of the things about being able to help people with some of this depression stuff is it makes me feel a little bit better about the suffering that I've gone through, because it feels like the suffering was for something, you know, it was so I could help people. I'm actually using the shit that's happened to me for something decent, whereas if I was just suffering until I died and nothing came of it, it would feel a lot worse. So yeah, even though therapy and medication doesn't help very much, helping other people makes it feel like this isn't all for nothing. And I guess I can put that alongside my sleep, diet, exercise, keeping busy. Those are the 4 things I'm doing to try and get better without medication, since that didn't work out for me. And I guess helping other people is a 5th thing that I can add to my list of stuff. So yeah, it's good for me, it's hopefully good for you, and if I fucked up anything, give me some comments. Yeah, now I gotta think of what I'm gonna talk about next week. Oh my god. See ya!